Frederick Douglass, once a slave, became a brilliant and powerful leader of the anti-slavery movement. In 1852, he was asked to speak in celebration of the 4th of July.
Fellow citizens, pardon me, and allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? What, to the American slave, is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty, an unholy license. Your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes that would disgrace a nation of savages. There's not a nation of the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument, is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour forth a stream, a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be aroused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and the crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
James Earl Jones reading the words of Frederick Douglass.
Are we seeing a rise in white nationalists among Hispanics? A new report in Axios cites two prominent figures who have been in the headlines lately, who could be helping to expand white nationalism among Hispanics and Latinos. Nick Fuentes, who identifies as a white supremacist despite having a father who is half Mexican-American, organizes the right-wing conference CPAC and also attended the Unite the Right rally in 2017. And the former leader of the Proud Boys, Cuban-American Enrique Tarrio, who was just arrested and charged last week with conspiracy for his alleged role in the January 6th attack. Other lesser-known examples are Alex Michael Ramos, a Puerto Rican resident of Georgia, who was also sentenced to 6 years in prison for beating a black man in Charlottesville after the Unite the Right rally in 2017. Before attending the rally, Ramos was reported to be associated with a far-right militia group called Georgia Security Force 111%, as well as the Proud Boys. And Cuban-American Christopher Ray Monzon, who belongs to the white nationalist group called the Florida League of the South. He used racial slurs and tried to assault demonstrators who were protesting streets named after Confederates in Florida, also in 2017. Are these isolated issues or cause for concern? Though there's no collective data we could find that supports the claim that Hispanics and Latino participation is growing, one of the experts Axios spoke to told them that the trend is part of the mutation that takes place as the racist fringe tries to become more mainstream. Joining me now to discuss is Executive Director of the Western States Center and Senior Fellow for the Southern Poverty Law Center, Eric Ward. So, Eric, first, the central question about this Axios article is how big of an issue is white nationalism among Hispanics, and is that white nationalism growing in that group, in that population?
Charles, it's wonderful to be with you. And the quick answer is we do need to be concerned, but we need to hold it in context. We need to understand that the Hispanic population is the second fastest growing population in the United States after non-Hispanic whites. We are also in a moment of intense scrutiny of the Latino and immigrant populations. They have been the victims of discrimination and hate crimes. In a time where far-right elements are seeking to drive the country towards an authoritarian space, and in a time where they're using political violence, it is not surprising that we are beginning to see within communities of color, including the African American community, some pull towards that far right ideology. And of course, we will see it in the Latino community most significantly because it is a large population. So yes, white nationalism is beginning to mainstream. It is beginning to transform what it means by white, and it is attracting some within the Latino community, right, who are using their identification as Latino, right, to shield themselves from accusations of racism.
Let's talk about that. You said gravitation towards whiteness. I think it is important, particularly for our viewers here, to hear this discussed and kind of laid out. First of all, Hispanic is not a race, it's an ethnicity. You can be black and Hispanic, you can be white and Hispanic. Talk to us about the kind of culture and history around how people identify. Overwhelmingly, people will identify, particularly on our census, when we ask them, or a large percentage, I don't want to say overwhelming, but a large percentage of people who are Hispanic will identify as white. And also in the countries from where those people come, very often they don't have the same sense of race and color as we have here. And so I've heard often people will say, that Hispanic people who I know in this country say, I was white in my country, right? So their concept of it is very different than the way they are viewed here. Talk to us a little bit about how it is possible to be identify with whiteness and therefore white nationalism in this country and still be Hispanic, because that, for a lot of black people, that's like, what do you mean? Because how's that work?
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? We're talking about a form of colorism that was very dominant in Latin America. In Latin America, right, race was not as static as it was here in the United States. In the United States, we're all familiar with the one drop rule, meaning, right, if you had one drop of Native American blood early on, or one drop of African blood, you were legally considered Black in this country. However, in Latin America, it was much more fluid. And what we see is that for many Hispanics and Latinos who identify as white because of European descendants, Latinos are made up of a mixture, right, of Caribbean indigenous, right, European Hispanic, and African or Afro American, and the descendants of Africans who were put in chattel slavery. Here in the United States, for instance, 5% of Latinos, according to Pew, identify as Afro-Latino, but it is true that the majority of Latinos identify as white. That has to do with the set of privileges that were afforded Latinos who were able to identify as white in Latin America. And that tradition, of course, passes here to the United States. I would say that readers should understand this, that our listeners should understand this. In the United States, race is set up in a binary of whiteness on one end and Blackness on the other. And our immigration history, right, has been grounded in immigrants trying to distance themselves from Blackness so that they are not afforded the same treatment that African Americans and indigenous populations must live with each and every day. But this is a little bit different in this moment. This is not an attempt to pass through society as non-Black. This is actual targeting of the Latino community to organize it, right, to carve out a constituency within that movement, but also to wedge the Latino community against Black and Asian communities who are facing increased hate crimes. But the third, right, is to provide a veneer, right, of denial that this alt-right, Proud Boy, militia, white nationalist formation is not racist. And it's simply not true. These groups, and including those individuals, espouse deeply disturbing racist rhetoric in their writings and in their speeches. And that's very well documented. The Latino community should not be confused. There is no safety within white nationalism. Safety comes from a multiracial democracy that moves us all forward together.
I just want to squeeze in one last question here. How do you think people square it when, white nationalism targets immigrants and Hispanics and people like the people we've just described who are themselves descendants of people from Latin America, but they identify with white nationalists? How do you think they can square that?
So primarily, they rebuild a narrative that focuses on their backgrounds, of course, out of Portugal and Spain, and they de-emphasize both the immigration history of their relatives, of their family members, and their own history as well. I think it's important also to recognize, though, that there were Latinos who have always been part of the United States, right? Mexicans and the Chicano community specifically, and also Latinos out of the Caribbean. But the end of the day is simply this, that we are seeing a rewriting of history that isn't factual. But we see that a lot with the far right in this country. We can't buy into it.
Eric Ward, thank you. This is very illuminating. I really appreciate your time tonight.